Ladies and gentlemen, this next man that I'm going to introduce to you, our guest speaker, he needs no introduction, but he is the next governor of Alabama, the great state of Alabama, and we're certainly proud to have him over here in West Alabama. Before I give him the mic, I want to say this about Ron Sparks. Ron Sparks is one of us. He is a true person. He is a people's person. He meets the everyday person like myself, just like he would meet somebody in Washington, D.C., for an example, and I appreciate that. He is good to the farmers. He is good to the working people. He is going to be good for us and the state of Alabama. But most importantly, he's going to be good for West Alabama, and that's what we need for a change, ladies and gentlemen. After saying all that, Governor Ron Sparks, the next governor of the state of Alabama.
Let me say this. On my way up here today, I just happened to receive a phone call from an Associated Press news reporter. And my Associated Press news reporter said, "Commissioner, do you know where your opponent is having his fundraiser tonight?" And I said, "No, I really don't." He said he is having his fundraiser in New York in a penthouse. And he said, "Well, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm having a fundraiser in Lamar County at a camp house." And I can tell you, I don't know what he's going to do with that money that he gets in New York, but I know what I'm going to do with the votes that I get in West Alabama. I'm going to become the next governor of the state of Alabama. You know, I grew up in a little hometown called Fort Payne, Alabama. And I grew up in a little house with my grandmother. My grandmother's now 100 years old. And that's where my values come from. She worked in a hosiery mill for 43 years. My mother worked in a hosiery mill. My sister still works in a hosiery mill, what few are left. And I worked in a hosiery mill. I know what Alabama hard-working values. I know what it's all about. I got my education in a public school system. Fort Payne High School. After high school, I went into the United States Coast Guard as a search and rescue. After I got out of the military, I got my education on a GI Bill. And I am a father, and I am a grandfather. And I can tell you, I believe that qualifies anybody to be the next governor of the state of Alabama. I really do. And I've had businesses. I'm a businessman. I've owned 3 businesses. I was elected the first time. The first time I was elected to public office was in 1978. I was 24 years old. And the people of my county give me an opportunity to represent them as one of their county commissioners. I pledge to you that I will not raise the taxes on the working men and women and businesses of Alabama. That is a pledge to you. And when I become the governor of the state of Alabama, we will start appraising your property every 4 years instead of every year. When I become the governor of Alabama, we're going to take sales tax off of food in Alabama. People shouldn't have to pay sales tax on food. That's one thing that you ought to be able to go to the grocery store and get without taxes being on it. You know, Representative Thigpen has... Let me tell you what I want to do. Whether you do gamble or whether you don't gamble, gambling is in Alabama. It's here. If you don't believe it's here, go down 65 and look at the 9-story hotel. Go down Highway 85 and look at the casinos they have. Folks, gambling is in Alabama. When I become the governor of the state of Alabama, we're going to tax those gambling casinos that are doing business in Alabama. And we're going to regulate it. We're going to have a gaming commission that is for the whole state, and we're going to control it. And you will not have it in your county before you get an opportunity to vote on it. That is a pledge and a promise. And when we tax those that are doing business in Alabama today, we're going to use that money for Medicaid, we're going to use that money for the Special Education Trust Fund, and we're going to use that money for an agriculture relief fund. Folks, In Alabama today, only 7% of our children get pre-K education. 7%. In Alabama, in 2008, there was 25,000 children that didn't graduate. If we raise our graduation rate 5% among males in Alabama, 5%, we save $125 million just on crime-related issues. And by not graduating those 25,000 children in Alabama, we lost $6.5 billion in lost earnings. If we don't educate our children, what is a young man or a young woman going to do in Alabama without a high school education in today's world? You know, I can remember my grandmother or my mother or my dad, they didn't graduate. But a lot of times they had to quit school to go to work on the farm. Folks, today when they quit school, they go from the schoolhouse to the courthouse to the jailhouse. Then we go from spending $4,000 a year to educate them to $14,000 a year to keep them in prison. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to educate our children. And that's why I have proposed a Life Start Scholarship Lottery program. We are educating children in Georgia. We are educating children in Tennessee. We are educating children in Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to educate children in Alabama with Alabama tax dollars. Why are we going to continue to let folks go to Mississippi and Georgia and Florida and spend their money and us sit here and act like it's not going on? Millions and millions of dollars are leaving this community, leaving this state. And what I want to do, I want to take a Life Start Scholarship Lottery program, and I want to educate our children. If you have a child in school today, and let me tell you why. Because most people can't afford to send their children to school in Alabama. The cost of tuition is going up to twice the rate of a family income. And we need a mechanism that will educate our children. And if we have a Life Start Scholarship program, if your child maintains a C, then they can pick a college or junior college of their choice. If they are below a C, they can pick a trade school or a vocation school or a non-apprentice or a union apprentice program. If they want to go to college, they can enroll in college, maintain a C, and then apply for the same scholarship as the people did that maintained a C. That's how we educate our children. That's how we educate people that won't ever have an opportunity. I am a firm believer that if they want to be a PhD or a pipe fitter, we need to make them the best that we possibly can. Because that is the number one priority in Alabama today, is that we've got to educate our children. Why? Because they live in a global... As the judge mentioned a minute ago, and I'm going to close, I am one of you. I am a working man. I am a businessman. And I don't plan on ever being a millionaire. I want to be your public servant. I want to be your governor because I believe that I have the vision to take Alabama forward. I believe that I have the vision to make good things happen in Alabama. And in closing, I'll say this. You know, a lot of politicians talk about vision. You got to remember, vision don't mean that I have the ability to look from one side of this lake to the other, because the lady in Alabama that had more vision than anybody was blind. That was Helen Keller. And you remember Dr. George Washington Carver? Dr. George Washington Carver once said, "A man with no vision is a man with no hope." You're here this evening because you do have vision. Because vision means that we have the ability to look into the future and make Alabama a better place to live. Thank y'all very much for allowing me to be with you today. And thank y'all.